My grandfather clock just told me it's 1/4 after. It's about a minute fast right now, so it's only 14 after. I wanted to go live and talk about intuition. The reason is I was watching a video this morning by, I think it was by Mike Winger. Anyway, he was talking about some stuff and it brought up how sometimes God warns us about things. And I don't know if you believe in God. I'm not sure. I do. Ooh, look at this cool pillow, you guys. Isn't that cute? Oh, what company is it by? Tommy Bahama. I got it at the auction. I got to zoom in a little bit. I got it at one of the auctions. It was a set of 2 pillows. And I love it. Looks good in my living room. Anyway, I want to talk about intuition. Oh, look at this. I'll sit like this. Okay. Are we good now? Yeah, we're good. Okay. Anyway, I just want to tell you a real quick story about somebody that I knew years ago. You can hear my dog's toenails on the floor. I don't know why she's searching the house. My husband had to go down to Lowe's to buy some screws because he's putting cabinets in the bathroom. I found these cabinets on the side of the road because I'm a scrounge. I consider myself a human vulture. And they were sitting outside on the curb. Now, I had just had surgery not too long before that, abdominal surgery, major abdominal surgery. So I was not lifting a lot. And I was in my little car. I have a little Scion. I probably could have grabbed 2 of the cabinets if I could have actually physically handled them, but they had either 8 or 10 cabinets on the side of the road. And they're nice cabinets. They're what you would buy at Lowe's, builder grade. And I called my husband. Remember when phones were like this? And I asked him if he could come and pick them up with the flatbed truck. Because we have a flatbed Ford, which means I can go to Winslow, Arizona, and we can role play. And I can pick up my husband on the corner in Winslow, Arizona, in a flatbed Ford. I digress. He might have intuition to not get in the car or in the truck. He'd be like, God is warning me against this woman. Anyway, look up the song if you want. Hey, you. Hello. So my husband and I were involved in a motorcycle ministry. Thank you guys, 29 people. We were involved in a motorcycle ministry and people would want to join the ministry. And so we got a lot of people that would come in and they had to fill out an application form. And part of the application process involved their pastor giving them a recommendation. And they had to list whether or not they had any felonies or, if they'd ever been arrested, things like that. And then the organization would run a background check on them. Well, there was this guy kind of hanging around us, and he was going to lunch with us. Now, my husband's cousin ran into us at a fast food restaurant where everybody was eating. I wasn't because I can't eat food, right? We know that about me. So he was joining us. My husband's cousin came in and goes, hey, is that guy trying to be is he part of your group? And my husband said, no, but he's acting like he wants to try to be part of our group. And his cousin said, well, you might want to look into him a little bit. So that was all that was said. Well, he had to fill out the application, and I don't really know how extensive the background check was back then. It's very extensive now, and I don't know if this guy is the reason. I don't know if information got to them about this guy. I'm at the leadership level. I don't really know. But anyway, he was hanging around. He lived not even a mile, well, probably a mile away from the entrance to our neighborhood, but that would have put him probably 2 miles away from where we lived. But if we could throw a stone across the river, we could have come real close to hitting his house because he was pretty close to us by way the crow flies. Anyway, he was a bit of an odd character. And we went to his church that he was going to. Asthma, I don't have the COVID. And he was talking at the church that morning, so he invited all of us to go. And he just had this real rambling message about hitting a squirrel and wrecking his bike. And I don't know, it was a weird message. He seemed like a real strange guy. But, I didn't catch any bad vibes off of him. It was just interesting. So eventually I started catching some vibes. Now, I consider it Holy Spirit. Some people consider it intuition. I do consider this a warning from the Holy Spirit. There's something not right about this guy. And then we were at a meeting, and he wasn't at the meeting. I think he had been to a couple of meetings, but he wasn't at this meeting. And the president of our club, organization, he said, this guy wants to be a member. How about we say yes? And he had turned in his application, but there was no message from the pastor on it. Like, he didn't have his pastor write up anything or sign it. So that was kind of a red flag. Like, that was a big red flag. But I just, he said, does anybody have any objections? And I just, raised my little hand and I said, I really think we need to think about this and pray about it for a while, because there's just something about him that makes me uneasy. And I didn't know why I felt uneasy. I didn't have any prejudices against him that I knew of. He was obviously a guy who rode a motorcycle, but there's really nothing, like, there were no big old red flags waving, right? So the president says, okay, that's fine. Let's let Mel, she has some worries about it, so let's let it rest. Well, then at the next meeting, for some unknown reason, without talking, without calling me and saying, hey, why do you have any issues? He just put it to a vote to make this guy a member. And I didn't vote, or I voted against. I didn't feel comfortable. We hadn't discussed him, and the pastor hadn't filled out anything on the paperwork. And I think my husband was looking into it because he was the regional director at the time, and he was trying to figure out what was going on. Well, the guy would come over to our house and he was buying duck eggs from us. I forget how much we charged. I think it was like $5 a dozen for people that we knew. And I sold them for $10 a dozen online. So I almost always carried a loaded .380 in my holster when I was at the ranch, when I was out and about. We had rattlesnakes and coyotes, and those are the two things that I came face to face with enough times that I generally carried my loaded .380 in my holster. And anytime anyone came to the ranch, because I sold poultry, goats. I mean, goats are not poultry. Believe it or not, goats aren't poultry. I sold goats. And I sold ducks, chickens, guineas, quail. I don't know. I sold a lot of things, and I sold their eggs and stuff like that too. So a lot of strangers came to our property. So I almost always had an exposed, holstered .380 on my hip when I was at the ranch. Well, I was out in the yard one day, and I saw this guy roll up on his bike, and he was there to buy a dozen eggs. And he gave us a 20, and my husband and I said, okay, we'll get you some change. But this was later. This is the very beginning. Let's get the very beginning. Something weird just happened outside, you guys. I have to go check. That was weird. What was that? Holy cow. That was a weird one, you guys. I'll just say hi to everybody in the chat. Hi, Fruit Squad, you're here. Hola. So he rolls up on his bike and parked in the driveway. I could see him, and an instant feeling of panic and dread came over me. Like, I had an anxiety attack. I had no reason to not trust this guy. I had no reason to feel anything toward him except that he was just a man at our house. I mean, I had no reason to fear him at all. But I had this feeling of dread, and I felt like my husband's life was in danger, and I felt like my life was in danger, and I didn't know anything about him. And this is where I feel like it was the Holy Spirit warning me about him. I actually went and stood, I didn't have my gun on me. I went and stood behind a big oak tree that was about as you could cut out a front door. I'm looking at my front door over there from this tree. It was that wide, it was that big. And I'm standing behind the tree, and I'm thinking, my husband is in the house alone with this guy, and he's dangerous. And I didn't know why he was dangerous. There was no reason for me. The cousin had just said, you might want to look into him. Okay, maybe he's got a couple of DUIs. Maybe he has a petty theft. I mean, what did I know, right? I have no idea. Maybe he lifted some lady's purse off a counter in a diner when he was 21, and here he is in his 40s now. I don't know. I didn't know what the guy's history was. But I'm standing behind the tree, hyperventilating in a total panic. I didn't know how I was going to get to my 380 in the house and protect my husband, because I honestly thought my husband was in danger. It took me a little bit. I prayed. I was terrified. But I finally went up to the house and I walked in through the sliding glass door that was at the dining room, and he was sitting in the living room. It was a big open concept house, very open. The great room was huge. And he was just sitting there on the couch with his dark glasses on, chatting with my husband. And all of my dread just went away. Like, okay, we're safe. Now, I may have gone into the bedroom and picked up my 380. I wouldn't have open carried it at that point, but I may have had a big enough shirt on that it could hide underneath. We got through the conversation. He bought a dozen eggs. They were only $5. He gave my husband a 20, and he said, we tried to give him change. And he said, no, I'm going to buy a lot. So just keep that, and I'll just come back and get more eggs in the future. Within a few days, before he even had a chance to eat that dozen eggs, he was arrested, and he had been under investigation because he had a 15-year-old girl he was holding captive in his home. Now, I didn't know that, but apparently he drove her to school and back on his motorcycle. She was the daughter of, he would tell people, she's my niece, her mom is my sister, and she's run into some legal trouble. But the girl told police they were not related. That doesn't mean her mom didn't give her or sell her to him. I don't know the particulars. But the girl had a mother who was no longer in possession of her daughter, and this man had her daughter. He had invited people to his house for dinner at one point, and I don't know who the people are. I forget who they were. I think they were some neighbors of his. And she was in her bedroom, and you had to walk past her bedroom to get to the bathroom. And scratched out of the wall in her bedroom above the bed were the words, "Help me," carved into the wall of her bedroom right next to the bed. Help me. When she ate, the people said she didn't really know how to use a fork and a spoon. She just kind of ate with her hands. And when the dog came over and wanted food, she just fed the dog the food and then would eat, gave the dog food, lick, 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 and then she would pick up the food and eat it too. She didn't know basic hygiene or anything. She didn't seem to have any training. She wasn't deficient, I don't think. She was in regular classes at high school. At some point, an investigation started. That man is doing 15 years in state prison right now for what he did to her in the months or years. I'm not sure how long he had her. And that's my story about intuition. I believe it was the Holy Spirit warning me. I don't know how dangerous he was to us. We're an old couple. We did have grandchildren who lived with us at certain times in the year. And one is a granddaughter, but they weren't with us at the time. It was one of the most terrifying moments of my adult life, standing behind that tree thinking my husband's life was in danger. And it turns out the guy was an absolute monster. And I had no reason to know, but I feel like the Lord warned me through the Holy Spirit, that man's dangerous. So anyway, that's my story, you guys. I've only been here now for 14 minutes. Right, Fruit Squad? It is crazy. Yeah, Fruit. Now I've got to hang up on a caller. Am I back? Can you hear me? If you can hear me, let me know. Sometimes when a call comes through, it actually takes away my microphone. So if you can hear me, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me? Let me know, please. please. I don't have my computer, so I can't type it out on my computer. Or maybe I can. Let me see. Chat filter. No, I can't do chat filter. Okay. Anyway, you guys. Oh, good. Thank you, Fruit Squad. I appreciate that. So that's my story of intuition / the Holy Spirit. I really do believe it was God warning me that there was a monster in my house. I can't explain it any other way. There was no reason for me to be afraid of this guy. In our ministry, there are people with a history, so there really would be no reason to think this guy was any different than, somebody. And in fact, some of the people in our ministry have been to prison, but they've turned their lives around, and they've got, their pastor will fill out a form that says, yes, he came out of prison, but he's been serving in the ministry and he's doing this and that, or she, mostly men in the ministry, but she is a good person and we trust this person and all that kind of stuff. His pastor wouldn't fill anything out because his pastor knew about the investigation, but didn't tell anybody. I don't know why some Christians feel like it's a big secret when they think they might have a dangerous monster in their midst, but this guy was in our midst. So I thank you guys for being here. I do want to show you my new toy, clip-on microphone. And I'm still charging the little receiver over there that I'll plug into the bottom of my phone. But I have 2 microphones and I can now interview people at the drag races. I'm really excited about this. I haven't interviewed someone since my 40-year-old daughter was 15. That's when I interviewed a Hollywood producer. That was a great interview. And I wrote a really good article about it. That was fun. But it was a phone interview. So I am going to hopefully start interviewing people at the drag races. And now that drag season is almost over, I'm kind of sad about that. But thanks you guys for coming in here. I do appreciate the thumbs up. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys. Maybe next time I'll be able to do it with my microphone. Now I'm going to help my husband do some installation. We've got some cabinets. Oh, it's pouring down rain right now. We need it. We're in Northeast Tennessee. It's been dry for a few weeks. We just get a little tiny bit of rain here and there. It's really coming down, you guys. I did drop a short a little while ago. Check it out. It's got some of my ducks when it was just sprinkling. And now it's absolutely pouring right now. Of course, I'm not at the ranch. I'm at the house in the city. I'll go to the ranch later this evening and put the ducks away. So you guys, God bless you all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next live. Bye, y'all.